There has never been a strong business case because of the distance from the gas fields, because of the need to transport that gas over long distances before liquefaction.
Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I am your host, David Krayden, and I'm broadcasting to you live from the Ottawa area. Thanks for tuning in today. And of course, you might remember former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing that there is no business case for liquid natural gas. And of course, Germany is saying we're already buying liquid natural gas from the US, but it's Canadian gas that we're buying at a higher price from the US. When we come back, we got a lot to dig into today. Thank you again for joining me, and we'll be back in mere moments.
The Prime Minister lied, and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist.
So we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to get into the Danielle Smith material momentarily. It might have to start with a shorter clip because with the longer clip, we were still sort of waiting for that. But before I get there, there's so much going on right now. And of course, there's been some great publicity for the Ostrich Farm. For Universal Ostrich Farms in Epic, BC. We've had Katie Passatney, the spokeswoman for the farm, on this show several times. I'll have her back on again. But it looks like they finally got some exposure, if you will, and the mainstream media is finally noticing. Yeah, Bobby Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the United States, got involved. Dr. Oz got involved. We've got incredible action going on here, finally. And here's a message Katie put out on her X post. Sorry.
Katie with Universal Ostrich. A big shout out to Lulu the Ostrich and the crypto community for developing such an amazing coin. Your community is helping us save these almost 400 ostrich lives that have so many more decades to live. There would be so much change in the world if we had more communities like yours. I just want to thank you from our farm, our family, and every animal that is standing out there and deserves the right to live the decades that they have left to live. Thank you from Canada and on an international level for your garnered support and all of your love and all of your hard work to see these animals protected and live decades more. Good night.
Thank you, Katie, for your hard work. And of course, this is help save Lulu. They've actually got some cryptocurrency surrounding this. And Lulu is a 30-year-old ostrich, and she's sort of become the, if you will, the spokesbird for the cause. And what is the cause? It's not just about 399 ostriches, although obviously that's the fundamental issue here. Does the government have the right to walk into your farm and kill your ostriches? No, they don't, especially since these ostriches have been disease-free, virus-free for over 200 days, as Katie points out. We're going to watch this CTV report and rebut something the government says here in a minute. But if you look at this message here on this slide here from Viva Frei, he's saying, let's establish a Starlink connection on the farm. There's media, there's people there supporting this farm already. We need live coverage so the government doesn't come in the dead of night, no pun intended, to destroy these birds. This is quite clear. And if anybody out there says, "Oh, I really don't care about ostriches," do you care about private property? Do you care about the right to your property, to your farmland, to the livestock on your property? Is that relevant to you? I think it is. I think that's what I have been saying from day one. I've been covering this with Katie Passatney, and she has been on the show several times. I think this is incredibly important because it is an issue that is larger than a lot of people even realize. This is about your right to private property, and do you still have that? And that, of course, is Lulu, the 30-year-old ostrich. I find this incredible. And I'm so heartened because I've been pushing this story for months now. And it's finally getting some traction beyond those of us on the independent and new media and those of us on social media. It's finally getting traction with the mainstream media. And for some people, that has to happen until it becomes a real issue. I don't agree with that, but that's how some people feel. Let's have a look at this report from CTV.
These ostriches are getting some high-profile help from the man once trusted by millions for easy-to-understand medical advice.
We have an incredible opportunity to advance science, something that just was handed to us. These birds are able to withstand this potentially devastating H5N1 avian flu virus. And why would we throw away this unique wisdom?
Dr. Mehmet Oz previously offered to relocate the birds to his Florida ranch. Another supporter, New York billionaire John Katsimatidis, is calling for common sense to prevail.
You know, the problem is common sense is not all that common. These are ancient, iconic birds. And now, I mean, they deserve to survive.
The ostrich cull was originally ordered last December when birds at the Universal Ostrich Farm in the BC interior tested positive for avian flu. A few dozen of the birds died, close to 400 survived, and the farm has been fighting ever since to save those survivors they insist are safe.
We have had no illness and no deaths on our farms for 223 days. They are thriving. Our herd of ostriches is a living vault of immunity.
Oz, who is now responsible for U.S. Medicare, says the surviving birds are now resistant to avian flu and their antibodies should be studied for the good of other animals and humans.
We have an opportunity to do something helpful for Canada, for the United States, and the global community in general.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has maintained even though the ostriches appear healthy, they could still spread the virus. And if they're not killed, the virus could mutate and become...
Hold everything. We did some fact-checking on this, fact-checking on the federal government's claim, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's claim. And here's what Grok had to say. And that, I know that Grok is not the final word on everything, but this is an indication that the opinion, the majority of opinion does not agree with the federal government's contention. Birds that recover from avian influenza, bird flu, are generally not contagious to other animals or humans in the future, provided they have fully cleared the virus. Clearly, they have fully cleared the virus. Here's a concise breakdown. Recovery in viral shed. Once a bird recovers from avian flu, it typically stops shedding the virus. These birds have been virus-free for over 200 days, as Katie Passaday said that. This is coming up to a year in November. So what more is it going to take? And as John Katsimatidis said in that report, common sense is vacant from government thinking these days. Now, before we get to Premier Danielle Smith, I had to share this with you because I wrote this story this morning for Human Events, not this one, but a column which will be appearing in the next couple of days. The mayor of Washington, D.C. admitted, Mayor Muriel Bowser has admitted that crime is way down in the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. since Donald Trump sent the National Guard and immigration agents into that city to work with the Metropolitan Police Force to stop crime. Carjacking, the mayor says, is down 86%. Carjacking has become a way of life. It's like it's accepted now in Washington, D.C. You leave your car out, it's going to be stolen. It is epidemic. But here's a reminder of what Democrats can be like. And I love this here. Here we go. Here we go. Enjoy this because this is wonderful. For some reason, Bob Hope was absolutely huge on X this morning and talking about a film he did. This is from Cat and the Canary, actually, 39. But here's a great scene from it.
This is Mr. Montgomery. I met him a few weeks ago in New York.
Oh, how are you? You live here? Yes. Well, maybe you know what a zombie is. When a person dies and is buried, it seems there are certain voodoo priests who have the power to bring him back to life.
How horrible.
It's worse than horrible because a zombie has no will of his own. You see them sometimes walking around blindly with dead eyes, following orders, not knowing what they do, not caring.
You mean like Democrats?
Yeah, that is wonderful. That's yeah. That was brilliant. I loved it. But before we get to the Premier Danielle Smith, here's Doug Ford belly aching again about something he refuses to take care of, the high crime rate in Ontario. And here he is saying again that just outrageous what happened to that poor man from Lindsay. Although this is Doug Ford's province, isn't it? Can he not do anything about it? Let's have a listen. And by the way, he's complaining about people robbing the LCBO. But this is where Doug Ford decided to unilaterally remove all United States alcohol, beer, and spirits. And that was complete contravention of any sort of agreement, trade agreement between the two countries. Did the United States turn around and take all Canadian liquor off the shelves? No, they didn't. But anyway.
Well, here's my little crime rant of the day. I don't know if you've ever did you see these characters on the news last night that went into the LCBO up in Kitchener? They're brazen bunch of crooks. You know, I have all the confidence in the world in the Waterloo Police Services. The chief, he's a champion, the chief. We got to catch these guys and throw them in jail. They just do not care. They go in there, they start loading up. And you know what's ironic? It's the taxpayers' money, the LCBO. And so they're stealing off the taxpayers. But I have confidence they're going to be caught, and the judges have to keep these guys in bail. Or the other one, did you see the gangsters going into the mall there and smashing people's jewelry right in broad daylight and just hammering away at it? It's out of control. And I love the one, I think it was a year ago, when the guy in the LCBO, just a customer, he stood up and held him accountable. I'd love to meet that guy one day. He gave him a couple slugs in the head. They deserve a slug in the head every once in a while. But anyways, we got to get tough on this crime. People are fed up. And I'm wishing all the best for our friend in Lindsay. I don't know who it was, but people are at their peak with this violence. I mean, with the violence, but the criminality, and they're just at their wits' end that the judges keep letting people out on bail. So we're going to hold these guys accountable, and I will be all over the Prime Minister about bail reform. So thank you.
There he goes again, talking about things that he could be in. He won't do that. And Doug Ford never ceases to amaze me. And before we get to the Danielle Smith clip, which the producer will put on momentarily, I wanted to show you this because this is Germany talking about liquid natural gas from Canada.
You might remember our former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau kind of famously said there was no business case to sell Canadian LNG to Europe. Well, when you look at what the Americans are doing, they sent 44 million tons of LNG to Europe last year. They're obviously seeing a business case for what they're producing. Is Poland interested in Canada's natural resources and LNG in particular? Is that something that you would like to see advance as these two countries get closer together?
Yeah. Well, remember, some of that LNG that is coming from United States to Europe, to Poland, is also Canadian LNG. But it's being sold for a much higher price, I would say, than when.
Yeah, I have to correct myself. I think I said Germany. This is Poland's ambassador to Canada. I've got Germany on the brain this morning. But if we can sell it to Poland, probably Germany too.
To sell Canadian LNG to Europe.
Much higher price, I would say, than than when it would come from Canada. Yes, we are constantly interested. We would like the Canadian LNG market to open to Europe. We would like to see the Canadian gas flowing to the east coast on Canada, and the Canadian gas flowing in European pipelines. This is, one of the energy topics that we are working on with Canadians for a number of years. There are others which are also very significant, and we are much more successful in the other areas than gas so far. But if you're able to make a push in that regard, that will be to the benefit of Europe, and that will be to the benefit of Canada.
It's like Justin Trudeau did not have his facts straight. What else is new? Now, we want to get to the main story of the day here, which, of course, is Premier Danielle Smith, who is actually out talking to Albertans, who is addressing issues. And I have to say, she is actually doing town hall meetings where people are allowed to talk. Not quite very impressed with the moderator here, but clearly this is an opportunity to have a discourse with the people in her province, and I think she's raising issues, and they're raising issues which are important. Now, can we have that clip now, producer?
I go to bed and sleep so well at night because I don't spend 1 minute thinking about how to win votes in Toronto or Montreal. So I just think about how to win votes here. But
we're over time, but here's what we're.
I should
again is the lowest. You can throw out that number, but if you multiply 37 students by that amount, there's part of the first problem. There should not be 37 students in any of those classes. Second is that once you take that number, sure, it may pay for a teacher and an aide. Who's paying for the principal, the secretary, the counselor, the heat, the lights, the technology, and everything else that goes into the school?
It's not Alberta Next, ma'am. Like, I'm trying my best, but it's got nothing to do with it.
Let me linkage. Let me do a linkage.
Okay, you do a linkage, Premier, but I'm not going to listen to somebody screaming at a microphone.
What we're talking about tonight is Ottawa over. Do you want to hear the answer? Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province and in the country.
Thank you. Okay, let's go up here again. If you haven't been to the mic yet, go ahead. If you.
Okay, so what's happening? This is the welfare state writ large. This is the welfare state as applied to provinces. So $25 billion is going to have not provinces like Quebec. So Quebec can take Alberta's money, can spend Alberta's money however it pleases. So this is why they have more generous social programs in Quebec, because they're spending Alberta's money. Is this fair? Whoever thought this was a fair process? Whoever thought this was somehow going to rectify inequality in Canada? All it's doing is encouraging have-not provinces to sit on their duffs and do nothing. It's creating deadbeat provinces. I'll say it again. Deadbeat provinces. And this has got to stop. But I'm sorry to say it's not going to stop anytime soon, even if Pierre Poilievre becomes prime minister, because he is committed to equalization. Why? because he is looking for votes in Ontario and Quebec, which are have-not provinces and are continuing to take Alberta's money. And this is why Premier Smith said she's not campaigning in Toronto or Montreal. She's running as the leader of Alberta. She is governing that province. So that's why there's a massive disconnect here. Let's listen to some more of the Premier.
Since 2005, Alberta taxpayers have contributed, on average, $23 billion more per year to the federal government in federal taxes than they received back in projects, benefits, and other spending from Ottawa. That's a net loss to Albertans of nearly $500 billion in just 20 years. Most of those redistributed Alberta tax dollars are spent by Ottawa and Quebec and other liberal-leaning provinces across the country. And part of that massive fiscal transfer out of Alberta comes through the federal Equalization program, which has seen Alberta pay over $67 billion into the program since 1957, while receiving back not a single penny since 1965. In 2021, Albertans voted in a referendum to remove equalization from the Constitution, but Ottawa completely ignored us. So what next? Alberta can't stop these federal transfers on its own. The Alberta government doesn't write a check to Ottawa each year, and we can't ask Albertans to stop paying their federal taxes. The fact is, fixing this problem will require political support from other provinces. One option that would be appealing to most other provinces is to have the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes. This is how it could work. Currently, Ottawa collects over 60% of all the federal and provincial taxes that Canadians pay. The Ottawa bureaucracy takes its portion, with the remainder inefficiently and unequally distributed to the provinces. The dollars we do get back have a lot of strings attached, forcing us to run our provincial programs and build infrastructure the way Ottawa wants us to. No provinces want that, especially the big ones like Quebec, Ontario, BC, and Alberta. What if we cut out the middleman and instead had provincial governments that are responsible for delivering health, education, and social services collect around 60% of all taxes, with Ottawa receiving the rest? Ottawa, in turn, would be able to end most transfer programs to the provinces, along with all the strings, bureaucracy, and waste attached to them. Quebec has already proposed having the federal government let provinces keep GST revenue generated in their provinces in return for ending the federal health transfer. Seems like a great idea. Why not apply that same logic to all federal transfers? Less money collected and wasted in Ottawa. Less federal transfers with only a modest amount of equalization for the smallest provinces and territories that actually need it. And more funds for provincial health, education, and other programs, without strings attached by Ottawa's politicians and bureaucrats. That seems like something most provinces could rally behind. So what say you, Alberta? Should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization by having the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes, with Ottawa collecting less?
There's a proposal, I think a modest proposal. I don't think it goes far enough, though. I think equalization is basically a bad idea from day one. And it is a reason there's a Western alienation, especially alienation in Alberta. And we've got to move on from this. Just have to move on from this. And so there's more from this fantastic town hall meeting with Premier Danielle Smith.
It's a constitution question, but this is equalization.
I think he was also asking me if I was going to run for prime minister, to which I will have to say no. You know, the joke that I make is I go to bed and sleep so well at night because I don't spend 1 minute thinking about how to win votes in Toronto or Montreal. So I just think about how to win votes here. But there is.
Question is because we've had historically a pretty contentious relationship with Ottawa. So how will you ensure that Ottawa is going to give up this $140 billion of the CPP for Alberta to start its own pension plan?
Well, I can probably get some others on the panel to talk about that, but I guess it's because it's the law. The Constitution gives to the provinces the right to have pensions. The decision was made in the 60s for Alberta to opt into a collective way of managing that. Quebec made a different approach. Quebec decided to set up their pension fund independently. On top of that, there's a statutory, it's ruled by law, what the formula is for determining what happens when a province leaves, what their entitlement is. We have a bit of a dispute with Ottawa about what that number is. I think Professor Toom's methodology was one that they seemed to indicate was one that they would be more open to. But this is the other fact of the matter, is that if we continue on in this plan, then we continue to overpay into the pension. Year after year after year, we're paying $9 billion worth of premiums. Our seniors get $6 billion worth of benefits. So every year, $3 billion per year, year after year after year, compounded, will go to Ottawa for them to determine what the investment approach will be without even asking us what our opinion is on it. And so I think, unfortunately, the federal government could have been more responsive. They could have treated us a little bit more like a stakeholder in this pension, and as a result, maybe made some decisions that might have been a little bit different in how they invested those dollars. But I would say, because it's established in the Constitution and in the statute, I don't know that I've ever seen a federal government that would just say, sorry, we're not going to do that. I don't know that they would have the ability to do that. I would think the courts would force that. But let me turn it over to Trevor, and he can maybe respond.
I think that was a great answer. I'd only add that the law that kind of enumerates what the formula would be that pays out to a province, there's certainly still reasonable disagreement around what some of the interpretation is and the language there. But it's a type of law that Ottawa can't just unilaterally change. It requires 2/3 of the provinces representing 2/3 of the population to agree to change. So they're constrained in a way that's somewhat unique among other federal laws. And so there might, of course, be disagreement around the payout. The video noted that as one of the risks and sources of uncertainty, but that law is on the books right now.
So don't you wish you had a premier, if you don't live in Alberta, don't you wish you had a premier who is capable of talking common sense? She understands that Canada is a confederation. Remember how we talk about confederation all the time? And yet somehow, since 1867 till now, the Confederation has been distorted to somehow mean strong federal government, provinces will do what the federal government says it will do. When in fact, the Confederation is the exact opposite of that. It means strong provincial governments that can make decisions like this about pension plans, about police forces. And that is what Alberta is doing. It's just asserting the right it already has in the Constitution. And people will say, well, Premier Danielle Smith is only doing this because of the threat of separation, because she recognizes that the Alberta independence movement is gaining momentum, that it has tremendous support. You know, I say with this, she could just ignore that, and she could just say, well, you know, it's going to work itself out. It's just not going to happen. So I won't bother talking to people. I won't bother getting feedback from the people of Alberta. And that's the last thing she'll do. And this is why I say, she is the leader of principled conservatism in Canada, because that's what she articulates. One more little segment here from Premier Smith.
Hi, my name is Sarah. Today, for the first time in my career, I carried out 400 personally funded books out of my classroom. I'll be teaching without books for the first time in over 20 years due to the UCP's censorship. Our school library is now closed until further notice. Teachers are being forced to out children. This is not my job. Many of us have been teaching in classrooms where temperatures climb to above 30 degrees on hot days. Our schools are no longer safe as a result of chronic underfunding by the UCP. We are the lowest funded per student in Canada. While you highlight the economic contributions of our city makes to Alberta, our schools remain dangerously neglected.
So
I'm getting there. Premier Smith, if creating safer communities is truly your goal, why do you continue to ignore the safety crisis unfolding in our schools?
Thank you.
How can we trust your policing goals,
Thank
pension plans, and provincial rights when you neglect our most vulnerable, our children?
Okay, so
Well, can I
Alberta Next is what we're trying to do. Premier, totally your call.
I'll see if I can connect it back to the panel topics. One thing I would invite every one of you to do is to go online and look at the graphic images that we are taking out of elementary schools. I wouldn't be
Right back with that. But thank God, this woman, this teacher, is complaining because pornographic literature, pornographic material has been taken out of the school libraries. You don't go a child at that age. That is absolute nonsense. Stop sexualizing children. Stop demanding that they grow up at 5 years old, at 10 years old. Let them have a childhood, for God's sake. But you can't do that, can you? And you're complaining about these books being ripped out of the libraries? Good for Alberta for doing that.
honest with you. I wouldn't be able to hold up an image, because we're broadcasting this. I wouldn't be able to hold up an image without a warning of graphic image of pornographic materials, including detailed sex acts, because it would offend our audience. And if our audience, adult audience, would be offended by that, a 7-year-old shouldn't be watching that.
That's it.
So
Hear, hear.
I'm glad that.
Here.
Yeah, thank God there's some courage in this Alberta government. This is the same courage, by the way, that allowed Sean Foyt to perform on the steps of the Alberta legislature, despite all of this hysteria that this was going to create security problems, that this was a bad thing to do because he was how do they put it? A MAGA influencer, potentially a friend of President Donald Trump. This was an outrage across the country, and there were only 2 places in Canada, Saskatoon and Edmonton, where he was allowed to perform as scheduled. Only 1 place in Canada where he was allowed to perform on the steps of the provincial legislature, and that was Edmonton, Alberta. Thank God, because the Premier said, look, I believe in freedom of religion. I don't even know what Premier Smith's personal faith is. I've known Danielle for many, many years, and that's never something we've ever discussed. But I do know she believes in freedom. I do know she believes in freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and free speech. It's quite obvious. I don't know how many premiers in this country still believe in that concept, but it's nice to see that she does. So I want to move on here. And by the way, I will be on Redacted this afternoon at 4:15 to talk about Canadian politics. Been a week or 2 since I've been on the show. They've been so busy and running fewer shows during the week, during the summer. So, but it's so great to be back this afternoon with Clayton and Natalie Morris. They're wonderful. I love their show, and they give me an opportunity to come on generally every week to talk about Canadian news. And I'll be on there today talking about Canadian news. But here's a story they did yesterday with Tom Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, about, yes, Donald Trump does it again. Potentially RICO charges against George Soros. George Soros, of course, is the billionaire who uses his money to subvert democracy.
So I want to get your take. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. You've been very, very busy and doing a lot of great work down there. I want to just get your sense of this George Soros thing, because every time these protests pop up across the country, there always seems to be some sort of open society foundation linkage, it would appear to me anyway, funding of these violent protests. And what do you make of Trump's push for like a RICO play to bring in him and his son?
Look, I like it because George Soros has been doing this for at least a decade, inciting violence, violent mobs, violent protests. And look, we believe in the First Amendment. We believe that people should be able to protest peacefully. That's not what George Soros pushes. And there's no reason he should not be investigated and potentially prosecuted for inciting violence around our country. You can't do that in our country. That is beyond the limits of free speech and beyond the limits of the First Amendment. So I think he should at least be investigated. We ought to find out what the truth is, because we've been suspicious for years that that's exactly what's going on. And then, of course, as you suggested, he's also been spending a lot of money electing district attorneys across the country, including in the liberal cities of my state. And what that means is more crime, because these prosecutors do not prosecute many crimes that they should otherwise prosecute.
Well, if President Trump if it doesn't move forward at the federal level, could you in Texas go after him? Would this be sort of the catalyst maybe that you would need in Texas to look at him individually?
So one of my great frustrations in my state, and I've been complaining about this for years, for as long as I've been Attorney General, which is 11 years. A lot of states have the ability, the Texas Attorney General has backup jurisdictions called concurrent jurisdiction with district attorneys, or like in certain states, like I know Alaska, that AG actually directs the district attorneys. In our state, the DAs have full authority. So in other words, they cannot prosecute or prosecute. They can commit crimes themselves and no one would prosecute them. There's no backup in Texas. I have insisted that we should have concurrent jurisdiction for the Attorney General so that if DAs aren't prosecuting laws, which under certain laws, we know that's happening in Texas, and that crime is rampant in certain of these big cities, we would have a backup. Right now, the legislature has not seen fit to give the jurisdiction to the Attorney General, but they should, because otherwise crime is going to continue to be ramped up in these big cities in our state.
But the president is publicly calling for RICO charges, and constitutionally, a president should not be ordering prosecutions. These should be separate branches of government. So you are somebody who could launch, can you at least launch your own investigations, even if you're a little bit hamstrung for prosecution? And what do you make of the president making these open calls for prosecution?
Look, everybody has an opinion. He can give his opinion. He ultimately has, just like I can give my opinion. I don't have the ability to prosecute. I can give you my opinion. But yeah, I mean, if we had some angle that we could investigate, we'd be certainly open to doing that. We are investigating one of George Soros's organizations right now. So we're in the process of investigating his organization and Beto's organization under our nonprofit laws, which I do have authority under to take away charters if we believe that they are being inappropriately used or deceiving consumers about their donations. So we are in the process of investigating Soros. My challenge is I need district attorneys who will actually prosecute if we find criminal charges, and who will actually investigate, have their own investigations and do their own prosecution.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Of course, George Soros has positioned district attorneys in so many places where they were reluctant to prosecute. So when we come back, some concluding remarks about why Donald Trump's America is succeeding where Mark Carney's Canada isn't succeeding. So we'll be right back with that in a minute. Now have a look at the store. I think it's some of the best merchandise out there. I'm really proud of it. And I continue to be proud of it. And have a look. Want to clarify something, because we're talking about the sale of liquid natural gas to Europe. Specifically in this interview, it was the ambassador to Canada from Poland saying that they're already buying it at a more expensive price from the US. So what's the problem? We had 9.5 years of stalling and impediments from Justin Trudeau to pipelines. So even if we turn this on right away, even if Carney's serious about selling natural gas, liquid natural gas to the Europeans, to Poland, to Germany, to whomever, we don't have the infrastructure in place to do it now. And it's going to take years to provide that infrastructure, because we had liberal governments stopping pipelines for the last decade. And that's why we are self-defeating at times. This country is more concerned with a green energy plan that is absolutely absurd. And, you know, we were talking last night on the Conservative Corner, and I encourage you to watch that at 7 o'clock with my friend Nico. We talk about current events from a small c conservative perspective. And let me tell you, this country is so obsessed with the wrong things. And why do you think Mark Carney pushes the green energy plan? Because Brookfield Assets Management has so much invested in the so-called green energy scam. And that's why he is pushing this agenda. He'll continue to push it. He might talk some days like a moderate. He might sound some days like he's really not that woke, but he is, because he has profited. He has enriched himself from woke politics, and he will continue to do so as Prime Minister. It's been a real pleasure joining you today on this Thursday morning. We will be back again, hopefully at the right time tomorrow at 10 a.m. And we've got more to talk about this week, because we are going to continue to resolve to resist. Thank you.
There has never been a strong business case because of the distance from the gas fields, because of the need to transport that gas over long distances before liquefaction.
Yeah, we never really have the last word to Justin Trudeau, but he almost had it tonight there. There he is telling you that it's just no business case, and he was not telling Canadians the truth. Thanks again for watching today. I will be back again tomorrow. And God bless this country. God bless people who try to work for the betterment of this country. And Godspeed